Hello, welcome back to a special episode of Tottenham Hotspur, the Spurs podcast about Spurs podcasts. I've convened a group of very thoughtful, very nice Tottenham Hotspur podcasters who also happen to be mates of mine to reflect on their experiences as Tottenham content creators this season. Apologies in advance to you all. I'm seeing some wincing from being called content creators. For the listener, you're going to hear a lot of people talking about where the squad is at, where we're going, reflections on the season. This here today is meant to be kind of a navel-gazing, self-reflective podcaster conversation about the season, and our experiences as podcasters as opposed to just as Tottenham fans. Highs and lows of kind of talking our way literally through this season. So I'm joined by 5 wonderful people, and I'm going to go through them one by one and ask them to just summarize the season from their perspective in 5 words or less. And this is lovingly stolen from another podcast, Dr. Tottenham. So if you hear that and you're thinking, he's nicked that, you're completely right, and I do what I want. So first up, we have Graeme Spice from Tottenham Home and Away. Hello, Graeme. How are you?
Hello. Very well, thank you.
So you are used to chatting to international fans, kind of one at a time. Here we have people living in France. We have people living in the UK. We've got 2 of us over in America. So I don't know how you're feeling going into this, having several people from different locations at once.
It's an extension from what we normally do, but I've had, I think, 3 continents is our usual challenge. So this is a good one.
Between you and Glenn, you've got it covered.
Yeah.
Every time zone, basically. So, your 5 words or less.
It made me feel ill.
Oh, God. Yes. We had some good medicine in the last 24 hours. We're recording this after Arsenal lost the Champions League final. I'm going to throw it over to Mike from Wicked Spursy, my boss over there, but I've turned the tables on him today. How are you feeling about that, Mike?
I don't know about boss, but,
Point of contact, supervisor.
Supervisor, sure. I don't like to be a boss or a supervisor, being a big labor guy that I am. But, however, Wicked Spursy podcast. I think my 5 words are going to be, why do I do this?
Wonderful days like today where we can meet so many good Tottenham fans. Next up, we have Graeme, aka Positive Spurs, if you follow him online. Great account to follow. And representing the Crowing Cockerel podcast. Hiya, Graeme.
Yeah, hi, guys. The Crowing Cockerel podcast, Positive Spurs account has at times been challenging. But my 5 words, I think, are hope, boredom, concern, stress, relief.
Nice. Very nice. We've got Stu representing CADS and YAPS. We've got some double teaming going on today. How are you, Stu?
I'm all good. Thank you very much for inviting me on.
And your 5 words?
A typically ridiculous Tottenham Hotspur season.
Very nice. We've also got Owen from YAPS, yet another podcast about Spurs. Hi, Owen. So what's the collective noun for a group of podcasters? You're the wordsmith amongst us.
Collective noun for a group of podcasters. A moan of podcasters, probably. A frustration of podcasters this season.
Yeah, I think. What's your 5 words?
My 5 words are, frankly, it was upsetting. There's 4. You can add an exclamation point.
I'm going to stay with you, Owen, for a second and just throw out the first topic is, which is we're a week out now. Season ended last week. We managed to get it past Everton. How are you feeling now?
I'm feeling distinctly positive now. I feel there's a lot of good we can build on. And I think we started to see that in the last few games since Roberto De Zerbi took over. I think we showed that we've got some decent players that can play some good football in those last games. And I think, at the avoidance of sounding like Johan Langer in January, the injured players will return. And I think that will make a big difference next season. So, I'm feeling overall quite positive about our chances. If we can get some good business done in the summer transfer window, I'm looking forward to finishing more where we'd expect Spurs to finish in the league. So challenging for those European places. Maybe not top 4 yet, but certainly getting up there.
That's my sense of the mood. I don't know if anybody on the call is feeling a little bit less positive, maybe even a little bit downbeat going into the season.
I'm just going to say that I'm not downbeat about the management, coaching, and maybe even what we could get out of the existing players. And my concern is it doesn't feel like there's going to be significant change in the hierarchy at the club. And do we trust them to do the rebuild that is needed?
Yeah, same for me. I'm extremely concerned that we're putting a load of faith in a group of extremely rich people who have let us down on multiple occasions in the past. It just seems like a recipe for disaster to me, frankly.
I mean, assuming that nothing's going to change, because we're a week out from the end of the season, everyone was hoping that, well, not everyone, a majority of people were hoping that Venkatesham and Langer were going to be gone. I'm assuming that we're going to be going forward with them. Graeme, you want to chime in? Graeme from...
Yeah, I think for me, the ownership concern is absolutely right. But I was quite engaged with what De Zerbi said in his interview at the end of the season. There's clearly a change in the sense of his message immediately. That season's done. We're now, I want more next season. And I think De Zerbi's a really powerful personality. And I think that combined with the close shave might just kick a few people in the right places, hopefully for the first time. And this is potentially a step forward.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Graeme is saying. I think that we weren't sure what we were going to get when De Zerbi came in, right? And he turned around the collective attitude of the team. It seemed from the Thomas Frank months to what we ended up with under Igor, and then that's a hard turnaround. That's a sharp break and a quick U-turn that he had to make with his team. What I'm really concerned about and what I really like to see is now the turnaround on the field, putting a lot of what his system is into place. I mean, we probably saw, a skeleton of what it might be, but once players start coming back and injuries start turning around for us, I think that we're going to get a really good look at what we're going to get out of a Roberto De Zerbi system. And I think that, on its face, I think it could be very good.
I just want to play devil's advocate slightly in favour of Vinay Venkatesham. He's been CEO for less than a year or thereabouts. That is a very short amount of time for a CEO to be able to make an impact at an organisation. Typically, CEOs are not changed very often. As we've seen at Tottenham, we haven't had a change in that in many, many years. I do think we still need to give him the benefit of the doubt for the moment. Yes, he has made some poor decisions, but I think the much more impactful change, which we may well actually see, will be a change in the sporting director role. So we know they're looking to bring someone in alongside Johan Langer, potentially. Going on how they've operated in the past, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they hire someone under the premise of working with Johan Langer and then Johan Langer is let go once that sporting director is in place. So we know they've spoke to Dougie Friedman. We know they've spoke to Sebastian Kerl. They're definitely looking in that area. And I think that could be the more impactful change than if we were to move Vinay on.
I'm curious about how much of Langer's influence on Venkatesham's worst instincts to stick with a manager. If he'd had a more challenging sporting director, like just Paratici maybe, like somebody who recognized the moment that we need to move on from this guy, rather than a voice that was kind of aligned with Venkatesham's history at Arsenal of sticking with a coach and it'll all come good. Whether we would have been quite in this mess. I have a question here from Mark Scrivens, basically asking how we apportion blame across this season. And how that's maybe, I'm going to extend it to like how we've talked about it, where maybe you've noticed that people have focused attention, especially podcasters, on the coaches, the injuries, the players, the current like situation that we find ourselves, and even the legacy impacts of like Levy's decisions over a number of years. I've heard come up. I don't know if anybody wants to tackle that big, meaty subject. Yeah, I'm going to throw it over to Graeme from from the Crowing Cockerel.
That's fine.
You were hoping, I hope it's the other Graeme. Yeah, where do we put blame?
I think there's multiple strings to this. I think the squad has sort of been decimated, and we had a chat on our podcast, about mid-season, probably around the January transfer window. And if you think about the squad, the peak squad with Pochettino, how many players have left that squad and actually been replaced with even similar quality, let alone increased quality? And I think the downturn and the decrease in levels has been years in the making. Add on to that a longer European season, a change in football as well. It's muscle and bullying again. The tiki-taka is going out of the Premier League. So Spurs haven't kept up. And then you add into that a change in personality that came into the club after Ange. And, hindsight's a wonderful thing. And I will say it now, I was positive about Thomas Frank coming in. I thought, fantastic coach, good track record. But very quickly, it was clear that he couldn't put a message across that could bring people together. And I try not to believe everything I see in the social media, but and then the players weren't on board either. Romero being made captain, and that potentially is a consequence of not having leadership in the dressing room. And it's come out that maybe there wasn't any other choice. So I think it's been seasons in the making, but decisions made this season absolutely did not help at all. And I think, I think Vinay, yes, he's only been in the job for a number of months, and it's his first, head of job as well. Langer, I think, unfortunately, is a bit of the fall guy, because he's been building this squad and been involved in bringing people into Tottenham for a good number of seasons now, and it's sort of on his watch. And why he can't be blamed for everything, I do think that ethos that he's been working under, is probably the biggest issue that's created where 217th Premier League finishes in a row.
I want to circle back to Langer in a minute, but just messaging in general, because he's been the most visible face of Spurs this season. Venkatesham's hidden. We haven't heard from the Lewises at all. I mean, I know it was their first ever communication to us at the end of the season, but when you say he's a fall guy, he was almost pushed in front of the bus a little bit. I'm going to throw it over to Mike real quick.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that, with not being in those back rooms and hearing the conversations that are being had or seeing what's actually going on, as far as money, putting money into the club, buying players, how the recruitment is done, all of that. I mean, you have to place the blame on, I feel like, the coaching staff. I feel the medical staff, the players themselves. I mean, these are professional players after all. However, you do also have to take into account the mental stress that's put on these players. One being on a club that is, quote unquote big six club, having to play up to expectations every single match, not necessarily being given all the tools, right? So it's hard to actually place the blame or on any one piece of it, but I do really think that it comes down to the recruitment of the players and the medical staff getting gazumped for players at the last minute, that kind of stuff. And not, like I said, not knowing the financial situations or how money is put into place for recruitment. It's really hard to make that decision on whose fault it really is. So
I think Graeme made a really good point. I think the quality of the squad, the mediocrity, I would say, of the squad is a longer term issue. And we've spent money, but we have bought poorly for about a decade. And that's been a problem. And whenever we got lucky with the squad that we had with Pochettino, that he developed most of those players. They were not expensive purchases. And when we have spent money, we've done it badly. There's very, very few players that we bought for significant money that have actually been decent players for us.
Yeah, does anybody believe that when they say they're going to spend money, we're actually going to see that in any...
Well, the first two players they've got are frees, right? So, but I'm assuming that means they can spend the money elsewhere, but...
Or on wages. I worry about how much Robertson is going to be getting paid.
It was always going to be an impossible task to replace Harry Kane. And I would say to an extent, very, very difficult, nigh on impossible, to replace Sonny. You kind of have to do a bit more of a extensive rebuild to replace those players in aggregate. And I don't think we've had enough time to do that yet. I think our recruitment has been poor. We have signed too many players of a similar type, too many running, ball-carrying eights, as opposed to anyone that plays in the midfield with technical ability, Xavi Simons aside. But I think if you're looking at who to blame, the spectre of injuries has loomed large over us this season. And Maddison said in a piece he did in the Mix Zone after the Everton game, he said, do you think if I was fit, if Kulusevski was fit, if Kudus was fit and Bentancur hadn't got injured, that we would be in the situation that we're in now? I don't think we would be. As much maligned as Thomas Frank rightly is, I think if he has all those players available throughout the season, we probably end up comfortably mid-table. We don't get involved in the relegation scrap, and the season is on the whole much less of a disaster. Whether that would have papered over cracks or not and been a net negative, I'm not sure. But I do think the impact of the injuries just cannot be overlooked.
I do wonder if the injuries lowered Frank's floor and we sank to it, or whether it just really capped his ceiling. It's an answer we'll never have. His football would certainly suggest that maybe it was a ceiling capper, and it just lowered it even further than he'd already lowered himself, and he just couldn't. There's no way out of playing the way we played because he had no options.
Well, he only had his only option was Kudus. That was his only strategy he had, and once we lost Kudus, he was out of ideas.
And played him into the ground. I mean, Kudus was run ragged. There's no surprise that he went down.
We talk about spending money, but Tottenham don't spend big money well. We never have. You go back to the days of Rebrov when we spent over and above what we would normally spend on a forward. And yeah, he scored some nice goals, but he did not do well at the club. Then you go through our history. Who was the last big money player in comparison to the average price floating around at the time that's actually done well at Tottenham Hotspur? It's not Giovanni Lo Celso.
You could say Romero. You could make an
Romero is the one I was going to point out. Romero is probably the only one, but even Romero is not a clear win. He's an extremely good player, but this is a guy who's caused a fair amount of controversy at the club, has got sent off, has developed a reputation that makes it extremely hard for him to go on the pitch and play normally because referees are keeping a weather eye on him because they think something's going to happen that often doesn't. In terms of where do I think the blame lies on the season, I think the blame lies on whoever chose Thomas Frank to be our manager, because realistically, he was not the right appointment for the football club. He couldn't play with the mix of players we've got, and he didn't have the strength of character or the force within to actually get the executive team above him to go out and buy the players he needed. Without those things, he was going to be a failure from day one, and that's exactly what happened. We had a couple of good games. We had some interesting ones. I keep going back to the Everton game where we played both Brennan Johnson and Kudus effectively on the right, and that was interesting. We did some good stuff. But then that got thrown out the window, and we were back to playing some fairly rotten football for the rest of the season.
I'm going to ask Graeme to cap us off on this topic, if that's okay.
Sure.
And then I'll move on to something else real quick.
Two very quick things then. Firstly, I think that the biggest issue we've had this season has been our home form, right? If our home form matched our away form, we'd have been comfortably top half of the table. And that's not a this season problem. That started last season. So actually, I think that if you having gone to a lot of home games, it's been god awful, and which you've all seen it anyway. But I think that actually Ange has something to answer for the home form in the second half of last season, because he basically gave up on the league, and it did. I think there's whether it's a psychological impact, I'm not sure, but the players seem quite comfortable with losing at home, much more than I was anyway. And then the other thing we mentioned about Langer earlier, the two sporting director model that we started the season with was always going to be a disaster. But then someone made that decision, and I'm assuming it was the Lewis family and Venkateshian. And then because no one could agree on anything, Paratici ended up leaving anyway. So it was that was a disaster. Langer was only supposed to be recruiting for the youth players and for young players, not for the first team. So he ended up with a role that wasn't what he's supposed to start the season with, and he's proven that he's not been capable of doing that. I think Paratici's the black book scout, right? He's the guy with the little black book with all the contacts, whereas Langer's far more data-driven, which is fine when you're looking for young players. So I think it just was a disaster, and yeah, it ended up really impacting the season. And like even the January window, I think, was impacted because of Paratici was basically sat in his garden earning money at our expense.
And doing work for Fiorentina.
Yes.
It does feel, I mean, not feel, but we've seen a flurry of articles come out in the last week, puff pieces for the Lewises, for Venkatesham, essentially saying that they were undoing or correcting course from a mess that was left for them. But I do have worries about their ability and their choices to try and correct that mess. And we'll only see as time goes on. Graeme, you mentioned, and I'm glad you mentioned this because I had a question for you, because you're a season ticket holder. You said you've been to games a lot, and you mentioned Ange and the form from last year. And that's been talked about a lot, is the mentality of the players in getting into a losing habit. How much do you think that was the fans too, of just getting in and expecting the worst from a game?
I think it certainly got that way. I think we started the season like most people thought Frank was a reasonable appointment. All the pre-season videos of the training looked quite positive. I like the look of the team they put together. They've obviously done a successful job at Brentford. It didn't turn out that way, and the crowd are pretty fickle, right? We're not
notoriously, sadly.
Yeah, exactly, and it was the really could be quite toxic at times, and it got gradually worse. The longer the run without a win goes on, the worse it gets. And I'll be honest that I didn't go. I think my last game was the North London Derby. I didn't go after that. I literally sold my tickets. I couldn't do it to myself anymore because of it's an awful drive. It's a terrible journey for me. It's like a good 2 hours each way for the match, and it gets worse depending on what time of day it is. The stadium was a horrible place to be when we're I think one of the games where we went like 2-0 down after like 10 minutes. So the games are wash already. It was awful, and I think the support has a lot to say. But then you could say they tried to turn it around with that Forest home game, where everyone met the coach before the game, and we lost that 3-0. So even when the supporters were behind them, it didn't seem to make any difference. So I don't. Maybe by that stage the nerves were already shot, or maybe the pressure was from the expectation was equally as oppressive. But yeah, it was. We really have an issue with the. I still remember fondly the last season at the old stadium where we didn't lose a game, and that's really what we need to turn around. Is that kind of resilience at home, consistency, and not losing games that we should be winning.
Yeah, I'm a season ticket holder as well, and I didn't go to quite a few games because of the toxicity, but mainly when Frank was in charge, because I think the toxicity was even worse when our tactic just seemed to be try and win a free kick somewhere near the halfway line and
or throw in.
Yeah, and I saw the article in the Observer, was it, or the Independent, by the journalist that said the fans hounded Thomas Frank out.
Was this Alison Rudd in the Times?
We deserved a rubbish season, and I really take offence at that, because I think the times when it's been really toxic has been the times when it looks like there's just no will to try and score a goal. And it's been the same under a few coaches. It was, way back with Santini, we were winning a few games, but the actual underlying way we played was so boring and awful. I think to lay the blame of the poor home form on the fans being fickle, and I'm not suggesting that's what you guys are saying, but that's certainly what's being suggested elsewhere. I think is a real cop out, because I think if you're charging a minimum of £1,000 a season to go and watch football with journeys that aren't always from round the corner, then you do expect a majority, I would suggest, of those days out to be fun. And even if you're winning 1-0, but it's coming from like the third corner and then you're just sitting back, it's just not going to ever be acceptable. So I think it's twofold, really. You need to get the fan base together, and I think the way that you do that is that you try and win games of football by being on the front foot. I think Ange maybe at times went too far, but I went to every game last season and I never thought the whole stadium was that toxic.
I'm going to ask Mike a question, because Mike had an interesting journey this season as a podcaster. Been podcasting for 6-7 years, Mike, and you had to take a break due to various different life commitments of co-hosts, and you've rebooted. Were there any points in the season that you wanted to just give up Spurs podcasting in general? There's been embarrassments like the coffee cup, the fucking coffee cup, the double header of Chelsea West Ham was just a point where you said, I'm gonna hang up my mic on this and take a longer break than you ended up taking.
I think one of the hardest things, and I'll be completely honest with you guys here, like hitting record on this microphone like this year has been really tough on my mental health. And I think on the mental health of a lot of podcasters, a lot of fans, 3 different managers in 1 year, in a lot of fan toxicity online. And obviously what you folks are feeling in the stadium as well. With our podcast, yes, there were a lot of life commitments and that kind of thing that got in the way. One with our one of our original hosts, Steve. I think that, and he decided to not continue based on who we hired as manager. So, and that's his personal journey. That
and not the only
through.
one. There's several Spurs podcasters. I think mostly stateside, interestingly, but people just took a step back. I think it's hard because you want to be positive, and that ends up coming across as support, right?
Yeah, and we took a break and we kind of tried to regroup, and I said, I want to still do this. This is something that I have put a lot of time and a lot of my heart and soul into. But on top of that, like, despite all of the negativity that's been around the club, whether it's losing matches, whether it's some of the fan toxicity that you see, or from some of the toxicity that you see coming out of big media as well, I really felt that, like, this is something that I didn't want to give up. I felt like that I had attached myself to this club, and with myself, my journey started with my son, and him realizing at a very young age that this is what he wants to do is to play soccer, football. And so there was a lot of soul searching for me, but I really feel like, we have a voice here, and whether it's going out to 20 people or 5,000 people, people look to us for our opinions, and or entertainment, or to get away from something, and I have turned this into like a therapy session. Wicked Spursy has become a therapy session for anybody who wants to join. And luckily I found that one of our random hosts that we would have on wanted to get more involved. I reached out to Iain and Jonah from Schooly Spurs, and rebooting the project has been pretty amazing, and it's kind of reinvigorated me for the other podcasting I do for lower league soccer here in the United States. So it's been kind of a journey, but it's also been kind of an awakening as well.
I have that effect on people. Stu, you've been doing this a while through CADS, and of course you and Owen started YAPS this season, almost like the worst possible time to start a new podcast and rope people in.
Yeah, that was my fault. So I'll be honest. I mean, talking about mental health this year has been hard, but I think personally it would have been much harder if I didn't have CADS to go and talk with. I mean, the CADS are a collective of people. It's not just me. And these are mates. These are people who I've known for years, and we've been doing this off and on for something like 6 years. So we've just managed to get in the flow and have a chat and enjoy ourselves. And there's some effing and jeffing and bits and pieces that probably should be edited out, but we don't. So, if we didn't have it, I think a lot of us would probably struggle more. And I'm not going to call out anybody, but there are some people on the podcast who have been through real struggles. And, the fact that they can get up every day and face the world the way they do is absolutely incredible to me. So for me, it's just the ability to talk to someone and have a chat with my mates was great. And then the way things was going on Bluesky, I was like, this is good, the way we're having conversations. And I was like, it would be really nice to have these conversations with actual voices with people. So, I talked to Iain, I talked to Doug, I talked to Peter in the past, as Owen, and I just reached out to them and said, right, should we do this and build a thing? And they were like, yeah. And then I was like, right, but I'd really like somebody else to host it and not just be on my shoulders as well. So Owen was like, I'll give it a go. Owen's been fantastic. So frankly, just everything, the way the season's gone, it's been rough, but I think in many ways it's kind of deepened friendships as well, because we've had to go through it together.
Graeme, Owen, you like me are a little bit newer to Spurs podcasting, and I have a question from Lunch Enjoyer or Hoagie on Bluesky, which is, your sickos, do you get off on this?
Yes.
Owen wants to say something. Yeah, Owen wants to respond.
Yes, I do. No, I love it. I've really, really enjoyed, despite the terrible season that we've had. It's been so fun just to be able to come and talk about it and get your thoughts out there. And I don't care if anyone listens to it. It's the enjoyment I get out of sitting with Stu, Doug, Peter, Fergus, whoever else we get on, and just being able to have that kind of fun conversation. One of the things that I think has really helped with that is we only record monthly. So it doesn't feel as much like that we're in the zeitgeist at any given time. And this season, that's been really refreshing. It's been challenging in the case of sometimes we've recorded and then something happened, like Igor Tudor's been sacked, or, De Zerbi's been appointed, and it's like, or we are going to be really behind the curve with this. So, from the point of view of being right on the pulse, it's been challenging, but just being able to kind of look at Tottenham from that very deliberate, zoomed out perspective has been really helpful in terms of coping with the season, because it hasn't, I feel like the fan base has been very, very up and down. It's been, it's a disaster, we've lost, and then we'll put in a good performance in the Champions League or something, and everyone will be like, we're so back, and pasting all the reaction memes and everything. And then we'll have another terrible result and everyone will be down again. So it's literally been the emotional roller coaster this season, and doing YAPS has allowed me to kind of just remove myself from that a little bit, very deliberately, and say, let's think about this rationally. And I think that's one of the reasons why I was one of the few voices that I heard on podcasts saying we're not going to get relegated.
It was you, I think, maybe a few people on CADS I heard. And there weren't many. A few people gave up quite early, myself included.
Kept the faith, man.
What I've liked about what YAPS has done this year is you brought a twist on the format, not just in terms of recording monthly, but you've got an identity. You came in, you start with puns, you reference the community you came from, you have skeets of the month, posts of the month, and I really like that. And Graeme, the Crowing Cockerel, has done something similar, I feel, with the Positive Spurs Corner, having appeared on it and having been on the inside, and also winning my first Tom's teaser.
I love Tom's teaser. I just want to say that. I love Tom's teaser. That's brilliant. It's great.
Because one thing I would say is that, the Crowing Cockerel podcast developed out of a WhatsApp chat group between the three of us over many years, and about 3 bottles of champagne on the 21st of May. And we just thought, let's just try it. And we didn't expect it to be, quite as many episodes about another loss, to be honest. Mm-hmm. But I think what you guys have absolutely said, and I think it's really, really important, because I don't think it gets talked about enough. But when you're so invested in a sports team and that sports team isn't doing very well, it is a massive, massive downer on the rest of your life. It really doesn't help. It's supposed to be your release. But I think there is a thing about, it's only a game. I don't know how your families, whether they're invested in Spurs as well, but mine aren't. Tom's aren't, and Mark's aren't the other guys that I do the podcast with. So the outlet isn't there. You have to be quite up all the time. You can't spend the rest of the Saturday or the Sunday being moody because we're in our mid-40s and we're adults and we're not going to go down that route. But the podcast has, certainly really, really helped. There's been weeks where we gave it a few days, to be honest, because especially I think the worst one was the Nottingham Forest result. I think because there was a lot of positivity going into that. And I think there was a lot of, we get a result here and everything's fine. And it was awful. But doing things like Tom's teaser, and I'll give a shout out to Tom because he puts together these ridiculous quizzes every week, which I'm terrible at. But every week, that's the point where we all just relax a bit, and it takes you away from the game, and it changes the sense of it as well. So I absolutely think if we weren't doing this, And it's, as I say, it's been our first year. But if we weren't doing it, it would have been much more difficult to get through this season, I think.
Other Graeme. You mentioned Ange earlier, and coming into the season, there was quite a big division between Ange in, Ange out. Do you think we've moved on in terms of that division? Do you think the fan base has come together at all? And do you hear that in the podcast you listen to?
I think it's like the beginning of this season was like you're going up to the top of a roller coaster. So it's that slow ratchet up to the top. And by the time you start dropping, you're forgetting everything that's behind you and you're just worried about what's ahead of you. And I think this season was a bit like that in that we had a couple of wins early on, so it was fairly positive, and then it just went downhill from there. So I think people did come together, but not in a positive way. Everyone was equally affected by it, I think that's probably the best way of putting it. And I think Tudor was a weird few games where you kind of wanted anything different to Frank at that point, but not that, as it turns out. And then the other issue, of course, is that De Zerbi's appointment was quite difficult for a lot of the supporters because of what had followed with his time at Marseille, and I think that did divide the supporters again. But I think I think that the games that he played and the way he spoke to the press was actually he's done everything he could do, I think, and I feel the fact that he's managed to save the season literally in the last seconds has probably means that people are far more positive and together than they have been for a while. But yeah, it's been a weird season. I don't think you could say that there was definitely. I think maybe towards the end of Frank's reign, there were people who maybe would have pulled the trigger a lot earlier, like maybe the West Ham game as an example. And then maybe we wouldn't have been in. Mind you, maybe we'd have appointed Tudor then, and we'd have ended up with the same cycle. But it was just, it's a weird season like that, I think.
I think it's hard to say with Tudor because, like, when he came in, it's almost like the horse had left the stable and he's trying to shepherd it back in. So I don't know. I feel like he was on hiding for nothing. He had even more
injuries, didn't he? When he first came in, he literally had 11 players, and he was playing he played Byfield as well, didn't he? At least a couple of games, I think, because he was
played Sousa too.
Yeah,
and his first game was a North London derby. He really just inherited a shit sandwich.
I hadn't gone for a few games. I went to that one to show a bit of support for the new manager. I didn't go back again after that.
Mike, if we are stuck as a club, which we may or may not be, but how do you think we unstick ourselves, or how do you think we build through the summer and beyond?
I think some positive recruitment. I think that we're going to when we go through this period of kind of rebuilding the squad, we have to not just look at promising 16-year-olds or guys who can come in and provide stability. 34-year-olds who can provide stability. We have to go out and you have to have a good mix of possibly those guys who are on the brink of being superstars, and tested, players who have been tested on the national stage or on the international stage and within professional leagues. I also think that we need to really think about our loan strategies as well. Because buying a lot of these players and developing them can cost you time, and it can cost you money. Because if you're constantly sending out somebody like a Dane Scarlett, right? Constantly sending them out in the hopes that someday you're going to get a good return maybe on him. You're just wasting time and money on a player that really may not ever develop. But at the same time, I think you do need guys who are in the States here, we like to call them clubhouse guys, guys who are good in the locker room, right? Guys who are good team builders. I think Madison is a perfect guy for that. I think that this guy came in and he bleeds for this club, right? And he showed it, and he showed it. And he has it. He's been at all the games, right? He goes through his injury. He's working his ass off every single day to get to where he gets. So I think you have to use the players here that are leaders too to recruit some of these other players. But you have to go through a period of positive recruiting, and it's not going to be done overnight. It's going to take a number of years to get there, and just like anything, like nobody's a Man City who can just go out and buy 6 world-class players. It just doesn't work like that, especially in this world where now even a middling player is 60 to 80 million, right? So Declan Rice's of the world are going for 100 million. Probably Jared Bowen, somebody like that, is going to go for 100 million, right? So we really have to be smart about it, and we have to be really calculated.
I think I'm a little tired of us signing potential, and that's even coming through in Savinho, who we've been linked with this summer again. I just want to see production. I want to see production coming in through the door. I love Matisse Tell, but again, we were banking on him growing into that production that he kind of promised in a highly functional Bayern team.
I love seeing potential. I love seeing these young guys come in and just
potential?
trying to play this football that we're hoping to see. It's about having the right blend of people around them. It's about trying to play the right type of football. I mean, you just look at Bergvall. Right? Bergvall under Postecoglou was a much, much better player than Bergvall under Frank. Right, so trying to get the right chemistry around them and trying to give them the right way of playing is so big. I love to see young players come in. I want to see more of it, but I want to see better choices. I don't want to see any more Clinton and G's. That doesn't work for me. You've got to make sure that the players you're buying are well thought out and well scouted. More Bales, less Clintons.
Owen, how do you think the club can maybe communicate that strategy and positivity to the fans a bit better than they maybe have? And do you think that they've done a good job in communicating any, rallying us, or in terms of telling us where we're going?
I don't think the issue has been so much in the communication. It's been the following through with actions to back up the words. I think if you look at Peter Charrington's end of season statement and the various other statements that have come out of the club, I mean, that's what we want to hear, right? They've said we're going to spend money, we're going to focus on the football. The actions are going to speak 10 times louder than those words ever will. And I think there is a collective skepticism that's rightly been built up over the years. But I mean, look, if we look at our history, as Stu said, the players we've signed have not typically been the superstars. It's been the young players that have developed. Kane, Bale. Could Mikey Moore be the next one? Could Luka Vuskovic be one? Maybe. I think one of the things they could do to really follow through with some of those actions is not only go out and sign some established players, right? Go and throw the bag at Adam Wharton, right? Spend 100 million on him, because that's what Palace will want. Palace will want north 100 million for him. Because they'll look at Declan Rice and they'll say Wharton's better than Declan Rice in their eyes. So they will want that. If we go out, he's exactly the player we need. Spend the money, get him in, but at the same time, integrate Vuskovic, integrate Moore into the squads. Moore could be the next Bale for all we know. He had a great season up at Rangers. Going out and signing Savinho, who's kind of going to do the same thing. He's a similar sort of age and is maybe going to block his progress into the side. I don't think is a great move. Yeah, I twofold. Spend the money on the right players we need, and integrate the exciting young players. We'll win the supporters' faith back.
Mike.
Yeah, to Owen's point, I really, you could have any of these guys could be the next Bale, right? I think that That's what was so great about Pochettino, is that he took chances on players. He took chances on, somebody like a Dele, and with the right tutelage and the right, post-Poch upbringing, Dele could have been something even better, right? Even something bigger. Skippy the same way, right? Maybe Troy Parrott, but you do have to be. You can't be completely risk averse when you're going out there in your transfer days. Like, you have to take some chances, and I think I think Adam Morton is one of those the first people I think about when you're like, you can't be risk averse. You have to take a chance on somebody like him, because I think he may actually be better than Declan Rice in the end. But I wouldn't spend maybe 100 million on him, somewhere between 70 and 80. But I don't know. That's just me.
I don't think we get him. I don't think we get him for 70 million.
No, you're probably right, and it'll probably rise that high if they're going to go after him to 100.
I think it depends on the market and who else is. I mean, I don't know how long's left on his contract, but I know that Man United are looking at Ederson, and I thought they were going to go for somebody like Anderson as their, for their midfield. Maybe they'll go after two central midfielders.
They've signed Ederson. I think I
Have
read
they signed
that went
him?
through. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But I wonder if that leaves some space for the rest of us to go in and nick somebody.
I think the biggest challenge we'll have this season with integrating young players is the lack of games, because we'll only have domestic season. We won't have any European football, so there's a lot less matches that we'll play, and that's also one of the reasons it will be harder to recruit those top level players as well with no European football. So it's kind of it's more of a foundational season. We need to get the basics right this season, and we may have to do a lot more youth loans again this season, because there won't be the games to give them the game time, I don't think.
I still want to see us have two players in every position, even if there are only so many games. We seem to have injuries and the intensity of the game now. So I do wonder if there is going to be some space for those younger players. I just think that we've doubled up and tripled up and quadrupled up in too many positions, like left wing.
Yeah, all I really want to see, from any recruitment is that it's based on what De Zerbi really wants. And I guess that's my red flag, if you like, with Robertson, because he was going to be a January signing. And it feels a bit like a club signing. And I'm not saying it's a bad signing, but it just seems like, well, we've gone back to that. And the same with Savinho. They're links and players we've been looking at for a long time under a completely different ethos in terms of the way that we play football. And I just hope that if they've learned anything, is that you get players in that absolutely fit the way that your head coach wants to play, and the type of player that they absolutely want and need, not a club signing on the hope that Savinho will turn into a £100 million player in 3 years.
Stu?
In terms of signing players and it being more difficult because we don't have top-level European football, we did get Van der Ven and some other fairly decent players when Ange started, and we didn't have European football then either. So, I don't think it's as much of an impediment as people think. Players want to play in the Premier League because it's got a high profile and they want to pick up good money, and a certain proportion of them want to live in London, and we're one of a few clubs that can offer that. So, if we can go out and buy 6 players that have got the quality of Van der Ven, we'll be absolutely fine.
I think that's what it comes down to, is, the players may want to play in Europe, but if you pay them the money, they'll want to pay. It's such a limited career that they'll want to. If you pay them the money that they are expecting or want, you'll get them. I mean, look at Man United this year. They finished 16th last season. I know it's Man United, but they haven't been that Man United for a long time. The all conquering team that everyone wants to play for. But you pay the money and you get the players.
Yeah, I think when we're talking about the Whartons, we're talking about players that we're going to be competing with the very best teams in Europe for. Whereas Van der Ven wasn't. It was good, but he wasn't. I don't think that we had a lot of competition for those kind of top echelon teams. So I think that's the difficulty in the market, is when you step up to those players that are ready-made internationals, especially the English ones. Everyone wants those players, and we aren't as attractive a prospect, I think, for those kind of players at the moment compared to why someone would choose Chelsea. I don't know, given that they've got about 4,000 players already, but the principles that they've always paid more money than we do. And if you're doing it for the money, Chelsea's the way to go, because you get a 9-year contract.
I mean, Wharton's just coming off of a man of the match performance as well in the Conference League. He's on I don't even know if he wants to leave Palace right now. I mean, Glasner's going, right? Is that for certain?
Yeah.
It's
So
his last game.
maybe he'll see it as a good time to jump ship. But whether that's to us, I don't know, because he's going to want to keep winning things now. He's got the taste for it. 3 trophies in 2 seasons.
We're talking about, being an attractive club to players to come in and evolve, which I think is what we've done best in the past. The flip side of that is we need to be prepared to let people leave at the right time. And we've done one side of it. We've often said, yeah, come in and we will help you evolve as a player. But then we've stuck our heels in the ground and said, no, Gareth Bale, you cannot leave. No, Harry Kane, you cannot leave. And we're doing exactly the same thing with Cuti Romero now. What we need to do is we need to make sure that we're not only really good at buying, but also really good at selling. Because if I was a player now and I was feeling like I was on my way up and I had a good chance of making a decent career in the game and Tottenham came in for me, I'd be looking and say, yeah, but I want to play for Real Madrid or I want to play for Barcelona, and you're going to make my life absolutely hell to leave to get to one of those clubs. I'd rather go to Chelsea and try my luck there and take the big money, because I know they're probably going to sell me to them because they need to get the cash in the door to buy the next player afterwards. So until we are winning titles, winning cups regularly, featuring every season in the Champions League, until we've got that, we have to accept that players are going to leave, and we just need to be better at buying and selling as we go along that path.
The problem is it's easier to sell when you're winning. When you're trying to sell a player when you're in a bad run of form, you're always going to be receiving offers below what you expect. And I do wonder whether that Brennan Johnson transfer in January is going to have burned this current iteration of Spurs leadership a little bit, in terms of leaving themselves short with the squad, and because they were supposedly selling at a good time and for the price that they'd set for a player. Time will tell.
I think there's a distinct possibility we could become a bit of a stepping stone club again. Like in the past, we signed players like Michael Carrick and Berbatov, who would join us, move on to Man United. There's other examples, but those are the two that came to mind at the moment. Mainly around like the Adam Wharton talk as well. I see a lot of similarities to the Michael Carrick situation there. I think when he was a young player, Michael Carrick had other options. He joined Spurs and used it as a stepping stone to go to Man United and have a really, really successful career. And I think we maybe need to come to the terms as supporters as to whether we're happy with that scenario taking place again, right? Because Carrick was brilliant for us. Berbatov was brilliant for us. Keane went to Liverpool, didn't he? There was something in having those players, even for a brief period of time, and we knew they were going to leave, that allowed us to advance as a team, because we got good money for them. We reinvested that into the team. And I think it was when Modric and Bale came along, we kind of did what Stu suggested we did and started to hang on to players maybe a little bit longer than we should have, rather than continuing the evolution of the team. And I think not only the fan base, but maybe the club needs to consider whether that is a viable option for the progression of the football club.
I am in the podcast I listen to, and which is, supposedly all of them, there is this sense of disgraced millionaire about Spurs, where we are a huge club. But I coming back to your point about what we see ourselves in the short to medium term, and whether or not we can accept as a fan base, and whether that can be communicated, how that's going to be communicated across, I don't know, TikTok, across podcasts, across YouTube. like how people are going to react to us accepting being a stepping stone or being a mid-table club for a season, because that route back for us from 17th finish 2 years in a row, admittedly with a Europa League trophy, I don't know if we're going to have the immediate spike back up to top 4, which I think is what a lot of us expect. And there's a difference between expectation and want, right? Like, I want to be top 4 and above, but do I expect it next season? I don't know. But
I think we have to remember that even in those years, we were still a good side. We were still, challenging for European places. We were in like
fun. We were still fun.
And it was fun as well, right? In the Redknapp era, right? We weren't the best team. Like, we qualified for the Champions League a couple of times, but we're generally around that 5th, 6th, 7th position, and like maybe that's where we are right now, and maybe that's what we should realistically be aiming for. Rebuild to that level, and then we can look at taking that next step forward.
It's like being a 10K runner or a half marathon runner, and you get an injury, right? You're not going to get the next day out necessarily and run a marathon after pulling your hamstring. You need that period of time to recover, perhaps, unless you can chop off your leg and get a bionic leg.
It's a shame Ange couldn't do that last season.
First off, if we can get Adam Wharton after that display in the Conference League final the other night, absolutely fantastic sign that would be. But to go back to the point about becoming a selling club and expectations, I think the issue now is how you sell that based on the constantly being told that we're the 9th richest club in the world. To be the 9th richest club in the world now, because we weren't that before Harry Redknapp, we weren't that when we had Carrick coming in. Levy wasn't perfect, but we are a much bigger institution now than we were. And I just think it's a difficult sell. I think what the hierarchy need to be is somehow find a way of being very honest of where we are in the market. Because at the moment, they're coming out now and saying we're going to spend money, we're going to up wages and all this sort of thing. But if that isn't uncapped and doesn't allow us to go and get Adam Wharton and basically slap a load of money on the table with Crystal Palace that they cannot refuse, and a salary that Adam Wharton cannot refuse, I think we're in the same scenario we had with Semenyo and Eze. It's just wasting time.
Gibbs White.
I think everybody needs a very clear focus going into the rebuild that now needs to happen, and the reality of what that really needs. And I think that needs to be communicated expertly, which is my worry.
I don't think we even really know what we are as a club right now, because we've been told some fairly conflicting things just over the last year. When Levy was at the club, we were told we're in a fantastic position to go out and spend money. Our wages to income ratio is amazing, and we've got this massive headroom to go out and spend some real money. And then since January, all we've heard is, because of financial mismanagement by the previous owner or the previous chief executive and chairman, we've been left in a position where we have to be really careful on where we spend our money. Where are we? What are we doing right now? Are we a club that's got money to spend, or are we a club that currently is struggling to make our finances work?
Yeah, there was a lot of catastrophizing at the end of the season about what would happen next season if we went down. But of course, we're facing a similar financial crunch because we're not in Europe. And we know the money that at least being in the Champions League brings in. So there's going to be a big shortfall. And I think that's worth bearing in mind when they talk about having money to spend or not.
I don't think I wanted to add to this particular piece is if you look at the clubs, we go and, like, we took Thomas Frank from Brentford. They're a club that's a good example of what I mean. Brentford, Brighton, Bournemouth, those clubs have been very successful, and they are selling clubs. But the reason they're successful is they have excellent succession planning. So they have good players, but they always have a player behind them that's ready to step in. And that's something we've been awful at. Like we talked earlier about Harry Kane and Son, for example. They were always going to finish at some point, whether it was by being sold or retiring. And it feels like we almost wait until players are out the door before we start thinking about replacing them. And if we could learn anything from those 3 clubs, it would be to do a better job, not just the scouting for the first team, but for the next iteration of players behind that as well. So like when you said about 2 players for every position, that's really something that they do very, very well.
And I would look at a team like Dortmund as well, who haven't got a qualm about selling a player, but they're selling at the right price. But they're trying to capture a Jude Bellingham. They've always done that for as long as I can remember.
The thing is, you kind of need to make sure that you don't do a Lyon, because Lyon were brilliant at that. Lyon were fantastic at making sure that they had their replacement in the club 6 months to a year before a particular player was going to go. All right. But the problem was that they had an ethos and they worked to it and everything was going well. And then they suddenly thought, well, maybe we can change it a bit. Suddenly we could spend a bit more money. And they got rid of the guy who had been in charge of all of that. And suddenly everything fell apart and got very, very bad, very, very quick. And we need to make sure that if we're going to go down that path, which I would be happy to see, we need to make sure we do it consistently and we commit to it. And committing to things is something that Spurs have tended to struggle with in the past.
And it's got to bring some modicum of success with it, whether that be just wins on the board would be lovely. If you're going to be selling players, you've got to be winning games. But that's tough to do.
Which is why one of the reasons I'm worried about Kell being linked with us, because he's the first sporting director at Dortmund that's really made a hash of that. So thinking if that's the way we need to structure the way that we recruit, I don't think he's the right person.
And of course, you had a great interview with a German football expert on Kell, which I would encourage people to seek out on the Tottenham Home and Away feed and listen to.
I actually think looking at sporting directors like Kell, the appointment of Thomas Frank, trying to kind of slightly half-heartedly move towards the model of a Brentford at a Bournemouth is just an example of kind of how the leadership has been a bit reactive to the trends in the way football has gone. I mean, I know we were one of the first clubs to originally have a sporting director. We popularised that trend somewhat. I actually envision it going the other way slightly. I think the sporting director will start to fall out of favour a little. I think Bournemouth just lost their sporting director to Liverpool. He's gone to Liverpool, taking Iraola with him. They're playing in Europe next season. I think they're going to really struggle with that. And if Bournemouth get relegated, I could see Tottenham leadership turning around and going, see, it doesn't work. What have we done? We've gone down this route that's clearly not the path. But we've seen it with I know Xabi Alonso has gone into Chelsea with the promise that he's got more say. He's been appointed as a manager rather than a head coach. Maybe we could be moving away from some of the more data-driven style clubs and back to kind of the old way. I'm not saying we should rehire Harry Redknapp or anything, but I could see it just being another example of how we react kind of a day late and a dollar short to everything.
I wonder how Kell, Langer, and De Zerbi are all going to work together, because it's all the noises we heard hiring De Zerbi was he was going to be our, scare quotes, Alex Ferguson driving decisions. And I wonder whether Kell and Langer are just going to be the data to try to support, maybe not Kell so much, but the data to support the things he wants. Okay, you want that player, here are some alternatives type of thing. You decide which one you want. Graeme, your time on the Crowing Cockerel has been a lot of fun. But what's something you don't think people appreciate about getting behind the microphone as a Spurs podcaster?
Oh, that's a good question. I think what we didn't appreciate is how difficult it is to keep a tempo and to keep it interesting and not just drone on. And we're still learning. I'll be honest. You do sort of catch yourself thinking, "How long have I been talking?" But I think that's the biggest thing. It takes an awful lot more planning than I think we ever realised to make a decent episode. And we didn't set it up to be very analytical. We're not one of these fantastic podcasts that pick apart games. It was always designed just to be three mates having a pub chat after a game each week, and having a bit of fun. But even then, you've still got to make it reasonably coherent. So yeah, I think it's just the planning that goes into making it sound natural is probably the shock that we had.
Yeah, running orders, finding guests, finding a time to record, finding time to edit. Even little things like, okay, what's the thumbnail going to be this week? Like, how do I differentiate this from last week? It's a struggle, especially if you're trying to put the time in. You've got to make sure you watch the game. Maybe you have to rewatch it. There's so much that goes into it. Owen, is that any different for you? And Stu can answer this too on YAPS, where you have a month lead up to tackling an episode.
I don't think it reduces the preparation at all. If anything, I think it could make it slightly trickier, because we kind of want to make sure that we have encapsulated an entire month of Tottenham within like an hour and 30 minutes, which the way this season has been going and how much has happened has been really, really challenging. And trying to fit that in a running order. It's just to go a bit of inside baseball on this a little bit, which hopefully your listeners will find interesting.
That's what it should be if they're listening to a podcast about podcasts.
Right? So we've got a shared doc that we all work on, and I'll set it up a couple of weeks before record, and it will have a running order in there, and it'll have some talking points that we want to hit. We'll put some materials on there that we want to cover in the pod, and we'll all kind of refer to that as we go. And then the other thing that takes up a lot of my time is writing my intros. Because believe it or not,
because you want to throw in so many puns, Owen.
I do. I have to.
Band names or.
I did it once for our Franksgiving episode, and then it's just the other guys on the pod loved it so much. I was like, right, this is a thing now. I'm going to have to do this. So it takes quite time to write them and make them interesting, and come up with a concept for them is challenging. So I love it, but I didn't expect how much work, how many hours I will be putting into the pod ahead of time. And I mean, Stu, how many hours do you put in after editing? And especially because we do video, right, which was a total last minute decision, and I think it was the right one, but Stu, I don't know if you want to add anything to that on the editing side of things, because you work really hard.
I think the decision we took very, very early on was that we were going to do video because it would be more inclusive, because, Bluesky is a very inclusive space, and we're always telling people to make sure you've got text in your alt text in your images, to make sure that, people who, struggle to see can make sure that they can read what the image is, what the image is about and things like that. And I realized very quickly that if we were going to do that, if we were going to properly represent Bluesky, which is what we were trying to do, then we needed to make sure that we had good captions on the screen at all times. And I'll be honest, that takes a good 6 hours to go through and make sure everything is right, because you get the spacing at exactly the right time, and you got the images then dropping in to make sure that you don't ruin the joke if there's a punchline coming up. So that's a lot of work, and it can take me 16 hours to edit a YAPS video, whereas it takes me an hour maybe to do a CADS one, because literally all I do is chop the ends off and chuck it out there, because there's a lot less thought that goes into CADS. It's much more anarchic in a way, but on YAPS we always wanted to be a little bit more considered on what we were doing, and I think that shows in the thumbnails as well, because the thumbnails, we've very much got a theme going.
It really depends on what feel you want to put into it. We had a lot of discussions about rebooting Wicked Spursy, about what kind of podcast we want to be, and I think we're still figuring that out on where we go from what came before. Graeme, do you have any insight in how you frame questions for a guest? Because you have a lot of people come on Home and Away who are from different spaces, different places, different lived experiences, different time with Spurs. Do you put a lot of time into thinking about that when you're...
We tend to have a kind of a set of generic questions that we like to ask everybody. Mm-hmm. So like really just sometimes it's the first time we've had people on and we like to get everyone reasonably comfortable. So we always ask them, what's your earliest Tottenham memory and why Tottenham? And this season that why has become more like why. So typically that's a good icebreaker, I think, just to get people comfortable and talk. I do think a lot, depending on because obviously the whole concept was that we'd have people from all the locations where we have official supporters clubs, so we can have interesting people on, and we try and find out we ask a lot about the OSC itself. So where do they watch matches? What does a typical match day look like for them? Because I think that's quite interesting for other supporters as well to really understand we don't all have the same lived experience of following Tottenham. So I think that's probably the most thought. We've been quite lucky that we find an unpolished gem every now and again that really gives us something really interesting. Like David's one of our guests we've had on a couple of times from Hong Kong, and he's doing he did a whole episode with us on like the financial expansion of the Premier League into international markets, which was super interesting because it gave us if you're a match attending supporter and you see a lot of Korean supporters in the stadium, there's a certain that's thought of in a certain way, but the actual amount of money that's generating and the amount of interest from outside the UK is incredible. And I think it was really good to really understand that. So that's you can get lucky, and just a casual conversation can trigger something like that. But typically we try not to be. We've had a few, for instance, when we had the Toronto Spurs on, we asked them about hosting the World Cup, which was quite an interesting. We were having a bit of a Debbie Downer on the whole USA were hosting the World Cup at the time, and we thought we were basically asking if could they just host all the matches in Canada, because like Mexico had the cartel wars going on, and the US had Trump at the time trying to make it as difficult as possible for anyone to do anything. So. But yeah, that was. But yeah, nothing really. We put a bit of thought into it, but not most of it. We like to try and focus on the football.
Well, gentlemen, I'm aware that we're about 20 minutes over the time that I said that we would go for. So sorry for eating into your evenings. Just to wrap up, just going to ask you where people can find you online, where they can find your podcasts, and if you've got any plans coming up for the summer, because we've got a World Cup coming up, but the summer period is often quite fun for Spurs podcast. People tend to innovate a little bit in that time. Graeme, Crowing Cockerel, where can people find you? Where can they find the pod, and any plans for the summer?
Yeah, so our podcast is on YouTube. We're also on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and then we do clips as well, which go out on TikTok. YouTube again. We got Facebook page, so yeah, we will pop up if you'd like to find us. But YouTube, if you can subscribe and obviously let us know what you think. As for the summer, I think I've only just decompressed from that season, to be honest. And the World Cup is only 11 days away, something like that. Yeah. So by now, I think I would have been quite hyped for a World Cup. But hopefully it will grow on me as time goes on. And we, as a podcast, will be doing our end of season review, and we will try and make it a little bit off the wall and a little bit different, just to keep it a bit entertaining. But we'll probably have a good few weeks off before getting back into it for the transfer window, as that sort of comes to a close and the new season beginning.
I want to see a full episode Tom's teaser with like a bunch of different Spurs podcasters.
I absolutely put it to him. I'm really, really pleased that the guys that have heard it really like that segment, because he works hard on it.
And that's not to diminish anything else that goes on that pod. The music is great. You've got jingles.
We do love a jingle. Yeah. We do love a jingle, absolutely. So hopefully we'll come up with some more in the new season. We haven't made a decision if we're ever going to do it sort of a live stream or anything like that. But that is on the list maybe to experiment with in the future.
Owen.
Yes, so we are yet another podcast about Spurs. I'll get the name right. You can find us on YouTube, all the usual podcast places, Apple, Spotify, everywhere like that. We are a new podcast, so we really, really appreciate if you could check us out, give us a listen, give us a subscribe, give us a like. I'm really proud of what we do there, and we'd love to get anyone's feedback on it. Everyone on this call that's been on this call today, I listened to all your podcasts and I think you're all brilliant as well. So I'd say anyone listening to this, check out all the podcasts here. They're all great. Coming up, we have got a little something I like to do on Bluesky, which is the end of season awards, where I get all the Koi Sky contingent on Bluesky to vote on a variety of silly categories at the end of the season. So some standard ones like best player, goal of the season, that kind of thing, but also some more esoteric categories as well. That's all ready to go. That starts next week. So I'm a own brand at Bluesky. If you want to follow me on there, if you want to participate, that would be great. And we're going to cover that on YAPS for our June episode as well, and give our thoughts on the picks there. In terms of what I'm doing this summer, I've got really into tennis lately. Nice. I've previously been like watching tennis, not playing. I cannot play, but I've previously like had like a passing interest in it. But I've been watching Roland Garros like really religiously over the last week or so, and I'm really looking forward to Wimbledon now. So yeah, it's a tennis summer for me.
Stu.
So yeah, I mean, I'll be on YAPS whenever Owen wants me. CADS, we normally take a bit of a break over the summer because there are no games to review, and we're really a after games type of podcast. We do get together if anything major happens. So if there's a big signing or anything like that, we'll talk about it. We have done squad reviews in the past, but I think so many people are doing squad reviews, but there are probably better people out there to do it than us. If we see something that we want to get together and talk about, we will. And we'll just do it for ourselves. If other people are listening, that would be great. People want to find me, they could just search for CADS, CADS on Bluesky, and you'll find me there. I'm there all the time. And over this summer, I've got a game I'm going to be launching on Android and iOS in the next month, and I'm pretty sure that's going to be keeping me extremely busy.
Graeme, any summer plans for Home and Away?
So yeah, a few things. So we're doing our end of season recording tomorrow, so that'll be fun. Then we are planning to do some World Cup specials, probably during the tournament. Just a few episodes where we'll probably get some of our recurring guests on to talk about that. We'll probably cover all of the pre-season friendly matches, and fortunately for us, we've got regular guests in New Zealand and in Australia. So we're hoping to have and they're attending the matches. So we're hoping for them to do some kind of some local content around the matches as well. So we'll hopefully be able to incorporate that into an episode, maybe even a live stream. And then my favourite thing is that Glenn, my co-host, who lives in Melbourne in Australia, is actually coming to the UK in August for his mum's birthday. And we'll be doing our first ever in-person episode. So that will be awesome. I'm really looking forward to that.
God, isn't that such a novelty to have people actually in the same room recording a podcast as opposed to Zoom?
Well, I've suddenly had to think about where we're going to do it because I can't do it here. So we're going to have to hire a studio, I think.
Oh, my goodness. Good luck with that. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys together, because you also record for video on YouTube.
Yes.
Tottenham Home and Away. So people can find it there and all the
and
usual
we're audio as well on all the usual platforms.
Yeah. And I'm going to jump in here for Mike, because Mike had to leave early. For those of you who are listening in for, where's the American voice gone? You can find Wicked Spursy in all of the normal places. We're not on YouTube at the moment. Used to be, but they're not uploading currently. And we do have a plan for some special episodes on kind of the weird history of Tottenham Hotspur and stuff that's happened to us. We wanted to have some special episodes, taking a topic at a time and just kind of riffing on our feelings on it and the key moments there. And I think there'll be a little bit of World Cup chatter too. Well, thank you all. This has been really interesting. I'm glad we could get you all together and find some time. And just like Owen said, these are all tremendous podcasts. They all do something a little bit different. They all have come along in the last few years, and apart from CADS, CADS has been going for a while, I know, Stu, but have tried to do something different with talking about Tottenham. And I respect that tremendously. So thank you, gentlemen. And thank you for listening. If you've stuck here for an hour and a half, it's been good. And yeah, you can listen to Tottenham Hotspur wherever you're listening to it right now, and a few other places. Follow us on Bluesky, me on Bluesky, and keep listening to and recording Spurs podcasts. Up the Spurs.
Why are there so many podcasts about Tottenham? Do I want to know why? They might contain insight, but mostly delusions. If I hear one more, I might die. They don't like Levy and they don't like Enoch. They pine for Moo and Conte. Someday we'll like 'em, old Tottenham Hotspur, the podcast clout chasers and me.